Prime Minister Justin Trudeau travels to India this Saturday, but there's increasing concern his visit will be overshadowed by accusations that Canada is harboring Sikh extremists. Now, this all has to do with this cover. It was taken from a recent edition of Outlook India. The articles inside suggest that Canada isn't doing enough to fight the rise of Sikh nationalism, which it says is growing right in the halls of Parliament itself. Joining me now to chat about this is Assistant Professor of Economics and Philosophy at Carleton University, Vivek Dehejia. Good to have you with us this morning.
Hi there. Great to be here with you.
What a notion. Let's go back to where this notion or this belief originated that Canada is harboring Sikh extremists. Where did this begin?
Well, there's something of a history here, Melissa, but the basic sort of facts behind it are that there is a large there's a large group of Sikhs in Canada, some of whom have harbored sympathies for Khalistan. This is the independence movement in Punjab. Don't forget the bombing of the Air India flight, which was done by Khalistani terrorists. And so there's a perception in India in some quarters. Now, the magazine cover is certainly a bit over the top, for sure, but that somehow, in Canada, politicians, for their own purposes, for votes or, for other reasons, may look the other way sometimes when there is budding Khalistani extremism. That's the roots of the problem, Melissa.
So when we go back to the magazine and that cover, which you describe as a little bit over the top, is there any truth or any credibility to the claims that the magazine is making? Or is this a dose of quote unquote fake news?
I would not say it's entirely fake news. I would say that there's a grain of truth to it. And I think that it's more or less an open secret that some Sikh Canadian politicians, I'm not naming anyone in particular, and they're from all parties, have been fellow travelers with Khalistani sympathizers over the years. That's no secret. Having said that, I think to say that there are Khalistanis in the cabinet is certainly over the top. But I think there is a grain of truth to the complaint that perhaps we just don't take the problem. It's just taken too lightly in Canada, perhaps because the Sikhs are an important vote bank for this government as well. That's also important, Melissa.
I mean, when you say that, I think the numbers bear out that there are approximately 500,000 Sikh Canadians across the country, particularly in Vancouver and the Greater Toronto area. Go ahead.
No, and in fact, because they are concentrated in these big cities, they can swing key ridings, and so they are a very important vote bank, particularly for this, for this government.
Let's talk about the response. Has there been a response yet from the Canadian government?
Well, there has been a response in the sense that various ministers in the government have, of course, denied it, and as they should. But I think if they say that there is no problem of Khalistani extremism in Canada or sympathy for it, that is a bit disingenuous. I think we should own up to the fact that the worst terrorist problem we ever had, or attack we had in Canada, was this bombing. And it was botched, and I think that still rankles back, with folks back over there, that this was not well handled. And we just need to be more forthright and say, look, we condemn this like we condemn all forms of terrorism or extremism.
We've got this trip that we were talking about that our Prime Minister will be taking to India this Saturday. How much of an impact is this narrative going to have on his trip, on trade relations, foreign relations in general?
Well, I think it will overshadow it a bit for the following reason. Since there's really not much prospect of the trade deal actually being finalized, all of these nuisance issues, then become more important. So given that it's kind of a fluff visit, a kind of photo op visit anyway, these things will rise to the surface, Melissa.
It's a storyline we will definitely be watching. Vivek, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me.